Oh, hi there, and welcome to Rauta's opinion video. This is more like random musings once again, and mainly inspired by a Lords of Chaos movie, which should be out about this weekend, probably in some places already out, and some countries a little later on. But this time I'm gonna talk about Norwegian bands, what made them, say, fall from grace, what made them lose the grasp of being the best black metal there is, what made them lose their crown as being the kind of a top tier black metal country in the world. This might be just annoying to some people. You might feel disagree with me and all that stuff. That's probably a given, considering how hot topic this would be, right, with these bands, this movie, and just general feeling how black metal is. But so this shall go as a disclaimer, so now that you know. Now, as with the proper opinion videos, as always, we'll go with some beer. This time I'm having Mikkeller's Hazy IPA, Big Bean Geeks, some cocoa flavored IPA from the Danish Bastards. Let's have a little bit of tasting here. So, lots of Norwegian bands that made a big impact on global black metal scene. Pretty much everybody who is following the channel should know that, well, should know without me saying it, that Norwegians didn't exactly invent the black metal, but they kinda made it big. Now, many people like me who have been listening to black metal since early or mid 90s are very much influenced by Norwegian black metal. There's no denying that. The thing is, Norway at that time had probably the biggest amount of really good bands that kind of took the whole black metal thing to a new level. Now, of course, at the same time, there were many countries having many bands doing wonderful music with important lyrics and all that stuff. Mainly, probably Sweden, followed by Finland, also Poland. There were lots of American bands as well, even though from Satyricon might claim otherwise, and so forth. The point here is not to compare countries as such. There's a whole different topic for a whole different video, and for example, I've already made a video about the differences between the Nordic black metal bands. The point here is to kind of like ponder what went wrong with Norwegian bands. How did they lose this grasp? Now, I've put here a list of names which I feel are the most important Norwegian bands of all time, maybe, especially from the early 90s, and kind of make some random notes, mental notes from them to you to get the idea what I'm, meaning with all this. Maybe this is just you random rambling out of my random thoughts, but bear with me, and if you can bear, well, have a beer. Let's give this one a toast. More like taste. Wonderful beer. So, like I said, lots of great bands. I'm not gonna list here every goddamn early 90s band. There are way too many. I mean, I could go on with Gehenna, Arcturus, Mysticum, and all those bands, which surely made something, but maybe we're not the top tier bands, if you will, of Norwegian black metals. These are not in any particular order, but doesn't really matter, because it would be kind of hard to put them in any particular order based on when they did their most important albums, or when did they start, or turn to crap. So I'm just gonna have a list which I'm going basically from down to the first position, and then you'll figure out why in this order. On the bottom of my list in this one is Ildiarn. That's basically a band that never failed with its albums. Surely it started making some ambient or more like synth soundscape albums later on, replacing it raw, primitive black metal. But as such, it basically never gave up, never lost its grasp, kind of like using the same name but making totally different music. That is like Bathory, one of my favorite bands, which I think just turned to crap at some point. But the point here is, Ildian also never became kind of a big thing. Way too raw, way too primitive, way too lo-fi sounding and all that stuff. And eventually it just kind of vanished. Don't know exactly why. I did an interview like more than 10 years ago with the man, and it was kind of enlightening. It's in Finnish, unfortunately, so it doesn't really help the viewers here. The point here is, I think Ildian is one of the underrated black metal bands from Norway, and I kind of wish that it kept going, would make a comeback of sorts. But then again, how so many bands kind of vanished, disappeared, turned their style into something else. I'm not hopeful in that sense. But it's a kind of a good example. You don't necessarily have to lose your edge to just vanish or kind of fall from grace, or, just kind of be one of the examples why Norwegians lost its grasp. I mean, once you just stop doing albums, good albums mind you, then it's like your has-been, much like many celebrities out there. Now, Oliver is one other example. They made a couple of great black metal albums early on their career. They made a huge impact. It's probably one of the most recognized Norwegian black metal names of all time. Yet, eventually, in hindsight, they didn't do that much black metal, really. I mean, already with their third album, they started to go with totally different direction. Still, in many minds, Oliver is highly valued, appreciated band, respected, but come on, only a couple of albums really. And I actually remember lots of critique back in the days about Oliver, so even though they might be gotten some different level of respect in the later years, so to speak, they never were that big a deal. And to be honest, I kind of understand. Much like Third Heimskard, they made a couple of albums and then became totally different. So Oliver might be a big influence for early 90s bands, but as a whole to the black metal scene, compared to bands like, say, Swedish Marduk, not really that big a thing. Carpathian Forest also falls in the same category of having most meaningful albums in quite short of a span of time. Now, I'm not a big fan of their early material, the demos, which I remember got so much respect and praise from people around black metal scene in the 90s. To me, they did their best stuff quite late in their career, but that's one of the bands that also turned to quite a crap quite soon. And to be honest, I don't know what happened. I mean, when I saw them a couple of years ago at Steelfest, they were just rocking, and I think we had a nice interview that's already online, by the way, has been since 2017. But the actual era of Carpathian Forest making good albums is relatively short. Once again, those bands that people probably kind of remember way better than what actually was. Not a band that actually made a big thing for the scene. But, memories are golden. Gorgoroth maybe shouldn't even be on this list, because after all, they are still making music. They had this big drama with, different band members going to the court of law about name dispute and whatnot. But to be honest, I wanted to add it here because that also started to kind of lose its grasp. Too many lineup changes, maybe. and later years those albums haven't been that much of a thing. I mean, considering the early albums, which are just absolute great, uh, Gorgoroth kind of, I don't know if it was because of the lineup changes, but some say that after Gall joined the band, which I could say is kind of a milestone thing, it started to go the wrong direction. Not right away, but during Gall's era. And that's kind of ironic because how so many people actually think or feel like Gall is the representation of whole Gorgoroth. But to be honest, I think by the time Gall joined the band had already, you know, lost its best edge, so to speak. So once again, not that good a band nowadays, even though it was kind of a very meaningful name early 90s, mid 90s and all that stuff. So never made that big with their best albums, which is kind of ironic. Now, Dark Throne is very much like Gorgoroth in the sense that early on they made their absolute best albums. But in fact, I think Dark Throne has been one of the most consistent band of all Norwegian bands. Not only did they did their the best albums in the Norwegian black metal scene, but they have also kept those albums going throughout the years. But if we look like past 10 years or so, it's not the same band anymore, and it kind of makes me feel really sad because I mean, A Blaze in the Northern Sky, Under Funeral Moon, Transylvanian Hunger, and Panzerfaust, for example, and a couple of other albums early 2000s. They were just great, just awesome black metal, and not only musically but also lyrically, vocals wise, production wise. It was kind of a sad thing to notice that they started to kind of regress into totally different kind of music, kind of a punkish, kind of a old school heavy metalish and whatever. Arctic Thunder was a kind of a good comeback, if you will, but that doesn't save from the very fact that it's a very different band than what it used to be. So it's kind of 50-50 whether it should be on this list or not, but I wanted to have it because I think it's worth mentioning. It's not the same. I was happy to see half Dark Throne live at Wacken in 2004, I think, which was just, in the middle of SatiriCon gig. It was just great experience. While it was only Nocturnal Cult and the rest was the SatiriCon members, it was great. Some 30 minutes of best black metal from Norway ever, and with Nocturnal Cult doing vocals and all that stuff. I mean, 2004. It seems like ages ago, 15 years ago, almost anyway. Those are the days gone. Now, another band that is on the borderline case here is Immortal, obviously. One of my think like, why? You just said that the album they made last year was just good. They made a good comeback and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but it's Demoness only. And meanwhile, Demoness was gone for a while. Abbath was doing stuff. But to be honest, after, basically since early 2000s, after Blizzard Beast, or even with Blizzard Beast, it was a kind of a different breed. I mean, no Immortal album has been like Diabolical Full Moon, Mysticism, Battles in the North, Pure Holocaust. Well, Pure Holocaust and Battles being my favorite Immortal albums. So it's kind of like different thing also. They kind of abandoned all these satanic approach so soon and became kind of like winter forecast metal, which has been the theme of so many memes and whatnot on the net. And to be honest, I kind of understand why they became such a joke, because the whole feeling changed. Now, don't get me wrong, there are good things with, the Bathoresque type of atmospheric metal, but it doesn't really sound the same. So, kind of a borderline case, which also is the same thing with Enslaved. While they never been kind of officially, if you will, sort of a black metal band in the terms of being like satanic band and all that stuff, I think there's no doubt that early Enslaved was a very big thing for the scene, especially with Frost, maybe Old. Their early material was a little bit different from the rest. To me, Well, to be honest, they are probably the best band from Norway if we count the whole career. That and Dark Throne, because I'm fan of later enslaved albums, but it's kind of a different breed. Why I wanted to have it on this list, because I could say they haven't been black metal like musically or lyrically or whatever like since ages. They're not the same band as in the mid 90s. And in a way, they never were. But then again, we have to remember that during the 90s, defining black metal was quite different from nowadays. There was not so much about this true false poser whatnot thing. Of course it was there, but it was usual different definitions basically. So these are all very borderline things in terms of like how do you define proper black metal band? Should it have this or that? Can it include this or that? Whatever. That's a different topic. But like I said, Enslaved is much like Oliver. It's different thing nowadays. One thing that actually gets kind of quite ironically, because it's not my favorite band by any means, is Timo Borger. I'm having it on this list because it's probably one of the only survivors that actually maintained their style and actually became kind of commercially successful. Now I know that those couple of words are actually like swearing words in the terms of black metal. Commercially successful? Did you really say that in the context of black metal? Yes, I did, and not in a positive way, not in a totally negative way either. My point is, Dimmu Borgir has always been doing whatever they feel like. I mean, they probably didn't give a damn when they started to give success. They didn't give a damn about people shouting after them. They were just happy to, do what they will. And after all, that has been the kind of satanic concept since the invention. But I mean, many people don't like their kind of a uberly orchestrated, symphonic and whatnot black metal. And I can understand why. They kind of sacrificed the lamb in order to become the beast that was drawing big audience and whatnot. They didn't stay in the underground. But then again, can I really blame? I mean, their music is probably most easy to approach, most easy listening black metal there is ever. And while I'm not a fan of their music as such, except maybe the latest album, which is on Dimmu Borgir-like album, all the kudos to them. I mean, they have done their choices well. They have been reaping, what they sow. So, I mean, like, hey, we can all be jealous talking here, but I think they went for it and they played it right. They had the card slaying before them, and boom, they got the success so many bands were just dreaming of. Not everybody. Probably Dark Throne wouldn't even take that kind of success even if they were given, because so many bands just don't want it. They don't want the tour life, do an album every few years and go on. But then again, neither has Dimmu Borgir been exactly like that. But they haven't changed their style too much. But then again, many people don't consider them as the typical Norwegian black metal band. So in those terms, kind of a borderline thing. And also, even if they are successful, it doesn't mean that most 90s bands are exactly that. Then the two names on top of my list are the ones that I'm probably gonna get most hate for. Thing is Mayhem. The Mysteries Dom Satanas is absolutely great album. One of the best black metal of all times, no matter which countries you want to include. I think it's very much near top black metal top black metal albums. Like, I mean, it's just near perfect album, almost perfect anyway. Thing is, after that, they didn't really feel like the same band. Wolfslayer Abyss, surely a nice mini CD, but not quite the same level. And what about the albums that came later on? To be honest, I haven't been able to enjoy any of them fully. Like Grand Declaration of War, even though it was fixed with proper mixing and mastering later on last year, it really didn't save from the fact that it's not good an album. And the others beyond that, maybe they a little bit got better, but to be honest, Mayhem never ever reached the levels what they had with the Mysteries Dem Satanas. Some have said it's both because not Euronymous. Some have probably other theories. I don't know, to be honest. But they never made it back. I mean, they were big, but still, people when they're talking about play some classic Mayhem tunes, they are not picking albums from Ordo or Declaration. They're going for Dead Crush or something from the Mysteries. So the thing here is, Mayhem is basically tapping on the success of their only really good album, and the rest. And when people are just putting, oh, Mayhem started in 1984, surely did they make it meaningful during 80s? Not really. Not in the 1984 anyway. So topics about being, you know, one of the first waves and whatnot. It's not that simple, I'm afraid. Then the other thing which gonna probably piss off people, because I know there are lots of people who are a fan of Vari Ikernes, aka Count Krisnak, aka Burzum. Burzum is one of my favorite black metal bands. Let's just make it clear. So many good albums early on in their career, or his career. But to be honest, the present time changed so much. Those synth albums that came after Philosophem, I don't know how to put it, but they are not very good. They are decent, but then again, there's a world of plenty full of better albums, whether it's about ambient or just synthwave stuff, which is kind of a trending nowadays. They were not that good. When Weakness came back with a couple of metal albums at first, well, they are pretty good, in my opinion. And if only he had retired after those, I could just totally forgive the couple of jail time synth albums. But unfortunately, that's not what he did. He even went to record some crappier version of the classic tracks, which in my opinion was even more stupid than Dimmu Borgir doing Stormblast all over again. I don't know about you, or if you have even heard the material, but to be honest, don't ruin your early version album experience if you can just avoid it. It doesn't really make your day better. Burzum is still something that I kinda wanted to remove him from, or that from this list, because he made that good comeback. But since he went again for the crap, like during that prison time, I kind of feel it very strongly should be on this list. Not be the worst case of an example, because I think Mayhem was that reason. But coincidentally, when I think in hindsight, I think when Burzum or Vikernes went into prison, Norwegian black metal slowly started turning to crap. Not crap like instantaneously, but losing kind of a momentum. Mayhem started to fall apart, not apart, but turning crap. Burzum stopped doing black metal. Darthrun was hanging in there, like Enslaved was already changing style. Immortal was about to change their style. Ulver had kind of different directions. And so many of these bands, they started to slide towards the fall from grace. And a couple of bands which I just forgot to mention, sorry, I kind of skipped from Dimmu Borgir to Mayhem, was that there was like Saturicon, which is one of the bands that also had great albums early on, but then started to slide, like early 2000s to something that was kind of like a watered down version of the band. I'm not gonna touch the subject more than this on this video, because there's a couple of Saturicon videos my opinion videos if you want to take a look more about their discography and whatever in the opinion video section. But like I said, Saturday Gone Off nowadays, it's not the same band anymore. Even though the same members are still there, it's one of the bands that kind of fell from grace. Not very quickly, but nevertheless. And the other one, I kind of jumped over, Emperor. I mean, like In the Nightside Eclipse. What a wonderful album. Once again, one of the better albums of all black metal. Very much like The Mysteries of Satanas. Just a cornerstone thing. And even though Anthems is a good album as well, what the hell happened with the guys? I mean, surely they progressed, but way too quickly, way too wrong direction. I'm just kind of glad they quit, back in the days anyway. But I mean, the point is, Norwegian black metal started to lose its grip, like already after a few years. You know, before 1991, there were basically nothing happening. A little bit, but like no real albums that made an impact. And suddenly, already in 1993, things were blooming. It was like so wonderful. And they were like the king of whole black metal scene. And by something like 1997, 1999, things were already so much different. It was not gone, but it was kind of clear that was to be happening. In hindsight, I didn't see it back in the days. I was maybe too young, too enthusiastic to see it all happening. And at the same time, Swedish black metal scene getting stronger day by day. Also Finland and other countries, Poland, like I said. So I think eventually the era of Norwegian black metal being really, really big and having the majestic feelings all over. Also about the bands that I didn't include, like Gehenna, Limbonic Art, Arcturus, whatever, 1349. You know, there were lots of bands that were doing their stuff, but it was kind of clear that the days of amazing albums, this kind of golden era, it was already gone. Now, don't take my word for that. I mean, I literally mean don't take my word for that. Rather, take these albums from early 90s and compare it to, say, 10 years later. Take albums from 92 to 94 and take albums from 2002 to 2004. And the math should do the work for you. Just pick up any of those bands I mentioned and just compare. Do you feel like the same level of quality black metal is right there? If you feel like nothing has changed quality-wise or anything, okay, I'm happy for you. But to me, it seems like the Norwegians had the 90s. It's clear. They were like sorry for my sports metaphor, but they were like the champions of that era. They were like absolute the best. Well, there were a lot of other good bands in other countries, but anyway, they were like the uncrowned champions. And suddenly, after a few years, it was all gone. They maybe became a silver or bronze medalist, or not even that. Nowadays, obviously, there are good bands coming out, and some of the old farts are still doing decent albums. There are good bands like Whoredom Rife, being one of the new era, but there are also bands that always did great stuff, but just call it quits, like Urgehal, which is, I think, underrated Norwegian black metal band. But it's not the same. The scene is not that strong anymore. Surely there might be a lot of things happening in underground which I'm not just aware of, but it doesn't basically change my point. The thing is, they are not the scene or the country that is just holding the world in its fist. Things have changed so much, and not for the good, I'm afraid, in the terms of being Norway. But then again, the overall quality all around the world is so much better when it comes to black metal, like worldwide. Be it Russia, be it United States, be it Poland, or any Nordic countries, Iceland, one of the most promising countries when it comes to black metal, Germany, France, you know, so many great bands so many places, Japan, So can I really be sad about Norwegian losing their gold medal standard? Not really. After all, we still have those albums in our shelves and streaming services and whatever, so what there is to complain? Now this became way too long a video. Hope you made it this far. If I forgot some really important band, drop me a comment and I'll comment back about why didn't I have in this video. Way too many bands, way too much content. See you soon with more beer kind of opinion videos. Take care and go back to listen to those classics. See ya.